All right, so today we're diving deep into ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. We're going way back to figure out how this place between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers became the birthplace of so much, like cities and writing and empires.
Yeah.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is how it all goes back to geography. Think of Mesopotamia as this oasis in the middle of a desert. It was like the perfect combination of natural resources that allowed people to not just survive, but actually thrive.
Right, the fertile part of the Fertile Crescent.
Yeah.
Fertile soil, lots of food, all that. It's like those rivers were a built-in irrigation system.
Exactly. Although the Mesopotamians were also pretty smart. They didn't just depend on the rivers, They mastered irrigation, like building these intricate canals and ditches to control the water. That meant they could grow even more food and support bigger populations.
But it wasn't just about having fertile land, it's what you do with it. They were like master gardeners, but more food, more people.
Yeah.
Doesn't that usually cause some problems?
Absolutely. As the population grew, small villages started changing into something completely new, the world's first cities. And I'm not just talking about a bunch of houses together. Uruk, for instance, might have had something like 50,000 people by 4000 BCE. That was huge back then.
50,000 people, wow. Okay, so going from farming villages to an actual city, that's a big change. What happened? Did everyone just become expert farmers or something?
Not really. When there's enough food, not everyone has to be a farmer anymore. So this led to new types of jobs. You had craftspeople, traders, religious leaders. Society became more complex, and that meant new challenges, but also opportunities.
Okay, so now I'm picturing this busy city, everyone doing different things, contributing to this growing community. Though something tells me it couldn't have been easy to keep things running smoothly. Did they, invent city planners or something?
Well, they actually had something even more amazing. They invented writing. Just imagine trying to run a city of 50,000 people without any written records, contracts, laws, chaos.
Wait, they invented writing? That's incredible. It's hard to picture a world without it now.
I know. Around 3200 BCE, they developed cuneiform. They'd press these wedge-shaped marks into clay tablets to make words and symbols.
So instead of just telling stories and passing information by word of mouth, they could record it, study it, build on it. That's amazing.
Exactly. And cuneiform wasn't just for practical things. They used it for stories, myths, poems like the Epic of Gilgamesh, which gives us a glimpse into their beliefs.
Wow. So from figuring out irrigation to a whole writing system, that's impressive. I have a feeling this is only the beginning though, right?
You're right. As their cities grew bigger and more complex, they needed better ways to organize themselves, especially when it came to governing all those people.
Oh, I bet. You're talking about thousands of people living close together. There had to be conflicts. So how did they go from simple rules to a system of laws that could prevent total chaos?
That's where things get really interesting. Because they didn't just create laws, they practically invented the whole idea of a legal code that applied to everyone.
Okay, a legal code for everyone. That sounds unbelievably advanced for the time. We need to dig into that for sure. So we were talking about this legal code in ancient Mesopotamia. It's amazing they were dealing with the same issues of law and order as us, just, without lawyers and courtrooms.
Right. But they found ways to create order, like the Code of Hammurabi.
Hammurabi, yeah. He was a pretty big deal, right?
Huge. Hammurabi ruled Babylon around 1750 BCE, and he wanted to be sure everyone in his kingdom knew the laws. So he had this super detailed legal code carved onto a big stone pillar, almost like a billboard, for everyone to see.
A stone pillar billboard, talk about getting the message out. What kind of laws were on this greatest hits list? Was it like jaywalking tickets back then?
Not really. The Code of Hammurabi had all sorts of stuff, from marriage and inheritance to business deals and even crimes. It gives us a window into what they valued and how they saw justice.
Okay, so give me an example. What were some of the laws that really stand out?
Well, there's the famous one, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I know it seems harsh now, but back then it was actually about fairness, making sure the punishment fit the crime.
So instead of someone getting away with something small or going overboard with punishment, they tried to keep things fair.
Yeah, it was about clear consequences, no matter who you were. But an eye for an eye was just one part of it. The code also had laws protecting property, regulating contracts, even stuff about irrigation, which, remember, was super important for them.
Right, can't have people fighting over water when your whole civilization depends on it. So this Hammurabi sounds like a smart ruler. But how did regular people even know what the laws were? Did they have to go read this giant stone pillar?
Good question. Not many people could read back then in Mesopotamia, but That wasn't really the point. Just having the code on display was important. It meant the law applied to everyone, even the king. It created this sense of, like, transparency.
Like, even if you couldn't read it, you knew it was up there, keeping things in check.
Right. Plus, people have talked about the laws, shared their interpretations. It became part of their culture.
Okay, so Hammurabi's code, a game changer. But we were talking about more than just laws, weren't we? Something about empires.
Yeah. As Mesopotamian cities grew, they started running into each other, competing for resources and power. That's how you got these powerful city-states all wanting to control everything. Imagine a game of Risk, but with real armies and much higher stakes.
So it wasn't all peaceful progress then, huh? Things were about to get real.
You could say that. All that rivalry and conflict set the stage for a major empire-building period in Mesopotamia.
So last time we were talking about how things were heating up in ancient Mesopotamia. We've got these powerful city-states all wanting to be top dog. Sounds like the recipe for some epic showdowns.
Oh, definitely. And that's what happened. Ambitious rulers came along, wanting to expand beyond their own cities, build these huge empires.
Okay, so who were some of these big empire builders? What made them so successful?
Well, one big name is Sargon the Great. Around 2334 BCE, he brought all those fighting city-states together. He used military strategy and some clever diplomacy to create the Akkadian Empire, one of the first real empires ever.
Sargon the Great, uniting Mesopotamia. Sounds like something straight out of the history books. So what happened once he had this empire? Did things finally calm down, or was it just a new era of conflict?
That's a good question. The Akkadian Empire did eventually fall apart, like all empires do, but it changed things in Mesopotamia. There was more cultural exchange, trade routes expanded, and you start to see more sophisticated governments and administration.
It's amazing to think that even though these empires eventually crumbled, they all left their mark and kind of added to this story of innovation and change in Mesopotamia.
Right. It's important to remember that everything, the irrigation, the cities, writing, laws, government, it was all connected. More food meant more people meant cities. Then you got those innovations in writing, law, how they ran things.
Like a domino effect. One thing leads to another. Makes you wonder, what was it about Mesopotamia that made it such a breeding ground for these breakthroughs? I mean, other civilizations had good land and rivers, right?
True, but there was something about Mesopotamia, this mix of the environment, their ingenuity, and maybe most importantly, their willingness to learn from their mistakes. They were always up for trying new things, new technologies. That's a big part of why we're still talking about them today.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into ancient Mesopotamia, what are some key things you hope our listeners will take away from this?
Well, first, Mesopotamia really deserves that Cradle of Civilization title. What they achieved in agriculture, urban planning, writing, law, governing. It wasn't just impressive back then. It laid the groundwork for so much of Western civilization.
It's amazing, isn't it? Something that happened thousands of years ago, a world away, still affects us so much.
It really is. And second, I hope people will come away with a better understanding of how connected history is. What happened in Mesopotamia didn't stay there. Their ideas, their innovations, they spread, they changed, they shaped everything that came after.
Really puts things in perspective. We're all part of this big story, building on what came before, learning from the mistakes.
Exactly. And as we deal with our own problems today, it's good to remember that spirit of innovation and resilience that helped the Mesopotamians not just survive, but thrive for centuries.
It's a good reminder that people can do amazing things. Well, we've gone from farmlands to bustling cities. We've decoded cuneiform tablets, explored the Code of Hammurabi. That was quite a journey.
It was.
And for everyone listening, we'd love to hear what you think. If you could travel back in time to Mesopotamia, what would you be most fascinated by? Share your thoughts on social media, and until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.